shows lean left, some lean right, but we lean local and business. This is North Georgia Business Radio X with Phil Bonelli. For the next hour, we will celebrate the businesses in our area and the people that run them. Find us on Facebook at North Georgia Business Radio X and online at northgeorgiabusinessradiox.com. Now, here's Phil Bonelli.
What's the biggest challenge that you face in your business? Is it retaining and recruiting employees? If so, you need to listen up today. Joining me is Brett Fowler, Executive Vice President of Employee Benefits with Turner Wood & Smith, and we're going to be talking about employee benefits today, as his title would imply. Brett, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me, Phil.
Brett is a great friend. I know Brett in many ways. I can't even list all the ways, but in all the roles that I interact with him in his community leadership and youth coaching roles and just being a good friend, I'm excited that I get to learn about employee benefits today because in that, he most certainly is an expert. So, Brett, tell us how you got to where you're at Turner Wood & Smith running the employee benefits department.
Yeah, so employee benefits, I've kind of been around insurance my entire life. Dad is in the business and was in the business when I was born. So known insurance since I was little, but we moved to Gainesville when I was in third grade, and my dad joined Turner Wood & Smith Insurance at the time. And since then, went to college and was trying to decide what I wanted to do, and it was kind of during the downturn in 2008, and opted to come back and work in the insurance business. Went to the risk management insurance school at the University of Georgia, number one, not only in football but in risk management.
Go Dogs.
So it was an easy transition back here, and started coming up on 15 years ago at Turner Wood & Smith. So it's flown by.
And I will note, please go back, audience, if you missed, this is actually part 2 of our overall commercial insurance, if you will, series. And we start out with Trey Wood, who's over commercial insurance at Turner Wood & Smith. So go back and listen to that if you haven't got a chance to. But we want to cover the whole gamut for our business owners. So employee benefits, I hear that. I think insurance, right? But tell us what all goes into employee benefits.
Yeah, so an employee benefit package can mean a lot for different size groups, but typically it's your medical insurance, your dental, vision, life, disability. So you have your work site products as well, that critical illness, cancer insurance, hospital indemnity. I mean, the list goes on, but it touches a lot of different product lines, and but primarily the ones that people think of most commonly are your medical insurance and dental and vision are probably your top 3. But it's that plethora of options.
Okay, so if I'm a business owner out there. Let's look at 2 different things. First, if I already have some employee benefits, and 2, if I don't. So talk to our audience who doesn't have, doesn't offer medical, let's say. Yeah,
so, I mean, if you do not offer medical insurance currently, if you're under 50 employees, you're not required to offer insurance. So under 50 employees, not required to offer anything, though many small employers do. The first step to get insurance is really to get a census of your employees. Requires, names, date of birth, zip codes, and that's what an insurance broker would need in order to provide you with quotes. An independent insurance, agency can quote you with every insurance company, so Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, Cigna, Aetna, the list goes on, could get quotes from all of them. If you're over 50 employees, you're required to offer insurance or you would face a penalty. So if somebody is out there with over 50 employees, then that's a must-have, and that's something that groups, as they're growing, have to keep that threshold in mind if they don't offer insurance.
Okay. So let's talk about those thresholds again in a second. If you're just joining us, welcome to North Georgia Business Radio X. I'm your host, Phil Bonelli, here with Brett Fowler, who is dropping some knowledge on us about employee benefits. So you mentioned the big carriers. All right, so you as a broker is somebody who really consults with and offers advice and is the intermediary to help someone navigate a marketplace. So there's the big carriers, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, whatnot. But then if I am in a market, like if I live in Northeast Georgia, tell me about the interaction. I know I see sometimes in our audience who have seen, hey, the hospital's renegotiating their Blue Cross Blue Shield contract. How does that work? Because the interplay between the insurance carrier and the healthcare providers is key to using the services, right?
Oh yes, yeah. It's and it can be a complicated matter. A lot of times those contracts go down to the deadline, and so not only are we hearing, the hospital's hearing it, from people, but we're hearing it from our customers, and they're worried about, are their employees going to have their benefits? So it's something that we typically have to navigate with the big carriers every 3 to 5 years, and we keep those dates in mind so that if we're making a recommendation to an employer. We're talking to the hospital. We have a good relationship with the hospital staff to say, that are doing the contracting, to say, hey, who's up for renewal, and do you expect any ugly negotiations, for lack of a better term there. So it is one of those things that we keep in mind. And as we're making a recommendation, there's a lot of employers that keep that in mind. If there's two companies that are close and one of them's coming up for a contract negotiation, they might go with the other insurance carrier in order to avoid having to have that interruption potentially within their plan year.
That brings up such an important thing about folks who are in a broker position, is that it really is incumbent upon you to be that consultant. So what a key piece of advice to get beyond, if I'm looking to, see what I'm going to do for employee benefits for my employees next year, it comes down to so much more than price. I need to be hearing from someone like you. Okay, well, here's what you need to keep in mind. Here's this issue. Here's upcoming changes and regulations, etc.
Yeah, and that's why we always preach, doing business local. It's one of those things to where if your business is located here, your employees are going to the doctors and hospitals in this area. So it's important to have somebody that is familiar with this area advocating on your behalf and giving you the information. Nothing against the folks in the Atlanta area, but they're gonna have more knowledge on that Atlanta market than they would this Gainesville market, and so that's a key. In addition, everyone can bring a rate to the table, and that's where I think you've got to differentiate yourself and get creative, not only in plan design but in the education to the employees and the group population. Those are all important factors that go into building out a benefit package.
One thing I'm hearing that's key for anyone listening, whether you are a broker of some sort or whatever type of business you're in, bring extra to your customers. So many things are a commodity. Banking's a commodity. Insurance is in many ways a commodity. How can you add more? How can you differentiate? If you've got a coffee shop, how can you remember your customers' names or give them detailed info on the kind of brew that you're making? What can you do extra, which you certainly do? So tell me this, as you are doing that, and I always get the sense from you, you are passionate about what you do and serving your clients. How much more rewarding is that?
Oh yeah, well we love to go out and do on-site education meetings. So I like to get out in front of the employee population of a group. If you look at the spend of most employers, healthcare is typically the second largest expense behind salaries.
Wow.
So the benefit package is usually a large number for these groups. And so we like to get out and do education to the employees, talk about ways they can save money by using low-cost facilities, using how to shop for your healthcare, how to shop for pharmacies. There is a big cost difference between those entities, and we want to make sure that the employees are educated on it so that they're making decisions that are not only the best fit for their family, but also to help the insurance plan and help have a good renewal in future years.
We're going to need to talk in the next segment about how to do the shopping. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I got my primary care doc, who's great, referred me to get an MRI. And it was like $2,500 or something. And I was like bemoaning this cost to the folks in the office, and someone told me, well, you can go over here and walk there, and it's $500. And it just blew my mind. I had no idea of even the concept that you could shop these things and get the same services for potentially less. All right, we are coming up on our break. So let's go right after our break. We'll talk about, how to be a savvy user of medical as you look at employee benefits and how that will help you with your customer or with your employees and your overall plan, and then how it will help you as a user. So join us when we come back in a few minutes with Brett Fowler. I'm your host, Phil Bonelli, on North Georgia Business Radio X. how do you best utilize healthcare services to serve you, your employees, your company? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to North Georgia Business Radio X. I am your host, Phil Bonelli. Honored to be here with Brett Fowler of Turner Wynn Smith Insurance, our guru on employee benefits. Thanks for still being here, Brett.
I'm glad to be talking through this.
He wanted to leave during the break, but we didn't let him. He's got good info to share. So what we were chatting about, I'd shared a story right before the break about my epiphany that I had options when it came to the utilization of certain healthcare services, like certain tests, exams, things like that. Let's talk about how can I be a savvy shopper, Brett?
Yeah, we've never really been taught that we can shop for our healthcare, and that's something just as a marketplace that a lot of people are still not aware of. And you've been able to do it for years. So one of the things that we really go through with our employer groups is making sure that they're aware that if their insurance company has a price transparency tool, a lot of the insurance companies now have on their app or online, they have a tool where you can go in and you can put in what type of procedure you're having, whether it be an MRI, a CT scan, some type of procedure. And it not only ranks it by low cost, but also high quality, because it's important. We don't always just want to go to the cheapest place if it's not going to be a quality provider. But if we can get high quality, meaning good results, then we also have the ability to have low cost, high quality, and package those together. So that will allow an individual to shop for their health care. And many times where deductibles in today's range are $3,000-$5,000, anytime you can get a low-cost, MRI or CT scan, maybe an outpatient surgery, those things are ultimately going to come back to you in the form of savings, to your pocket.
Okay. And so does it matter much if, like, I'm an employer? Do I want my employees? I want them to spend less because that's going to help my plan. Am I thinking about that right?
If a group is fully insured, then the claims will not have a real effect on their rates. But many groups we want to be level funded or even self funded, and in those cases it is very important. But we still educate everybody, even if you're fully insured, on these topics, because the goal is to move them from fully insured to level funded, where their rates are medically underwritten and the claims are based off of the rates are based off your claims each year. So if we can get them educated on doing the low cost, high quality providers, then ultimately that'll help them shift into being a better group, which we can get into then level funded or self funded. And then it really starts mattering, because that's how the insurance carriers look at your rates. What are you paying in premium versus what are they paying out in claims? And ultimately, if you're making money for them, then they're going to want to keep you as a client, and your increases will be minimal.
Okay. Another great lesson to take from Brett for whatever it is that you do. All right. So 2 things I heard right before the break. Brett mentioned he loves to do employee education. So once he has gotten let's say you sign up a new customer, and they've got 200 employees, they're going to do their employee benefits with you. That's great. And he could just say, hey, great, we're getting paid, that's it, yeah. But he continues to deeply service them. And again, as we mentioned, that's just more rewarding. It's good to actually serve people and do a good job. But how much more likely are you to continue to keep that customer when you do that?
Yeah, we love to do mandatory open enrollment meetings, and that's hard for some groups, especially in the manufacturing, to pull their employees off of it. I could argue, though, that it's worth their time to spend 30 minutes to an hour, and we break them up into groups of maybe 20 to 40 employees. They come out, and we get them in a break room and go over all the education around it. And it's not just a one-year thing. It's a continued education, because not only are you bringing on more staff each year who haven't heard that same message, but sometimes people need to hear things a couple times before it resonates. Maybe they didn't have anything in their life going on that needed that health care, but then the next year they do. And so it is important not only do it when you make a change, but to have ongoing annual education meetings with your staff.
Right. I was actually surprised you mentioned that oftentimes employee benefits are the second highest cost behind payroll. So if this is going to be a very meaningful and worthwhile investment for your company, use every resource out there, listeners, to fully maximize it. Make sure people are using it and seeing the benefit, because if they don't see how valuable it is, you're not getting the bang for your buck of retaining employees. If you're just joining us on North Georgia Business Radio X, welcome. I'm your host, Phil Bonelli, here with Brett Fowler, Executive VP of Employee Benefits at Turner Wynn Smith Insurance. Tell us, Brett, I know that when it comes to getting employee benefits, we touched a little bit on the size of the company, but there are different buckets companies fit in. What are those buckets and what are the differences?
Yeah, so you have the individual market. Maybe you have a small group that doesn't offer benefits, or maybe the business owner is just a one-man shop. They might need individual business. And then you have the 1 to 50 employee market. It can be a one-person group. A lot of people don't realize that, but it can be a one-person group as long as it's not the business owner. And then you have 51 to 99. And then you have the 100-plus segment. Obviously, you can, as you scale up in the 250-plus, 500-plus, you start seeing more self-funded. But really, the three main market segments are that small group 1 to 50, the 50 to 99, and then the 100-plus market.
Okay. And the tools at their disposal, I guess, change some. How do the rates often compare?
Yeah, there's just different rules in each market. So in the 1 to 50 market, a lot of times it is based off of fully insured, or it could be medically underwritten. Whereas when you get over 50 employees, it becomes all medically underwritten. So they are going to look at the risk of the organization to determine what the rates would be. And then in the 100 plus, you become more credible the larger you are, and therefore, your claims risk is going to be more important to determining what the rates, would be.
All right, so you mentioned the terms fully insured and medically underwritten. Let's unpack what those two mean for our listeners.
Yeah, so fully insured is where a company, the rates are only based off of the date of birth and the zip code for the most part for a group. So you could have the healthiest group or the unhealthiest group, but if those metrics were the same, they would get the same rates.
Okay.
We see groups that stay fully insured that maybe have some underlying medical conditions present in the group. If they're a small group, maybe 10 employees, but they have an ongoing cancer, for example, that's going to be a large claim. And a group that's insurance carrier that's going to medically underwrite is not going to see that as a customer they would want to take on at the time. So we might have to transition that group into a fully insured segment where they can't be penalized for their conditions. When we talk about level funded, we talk about that's where they're going to look at the group from a medical risk. So some of the carriers will require you to complete medical applications, and that way they can get a pulse of what's going on within the groups. Other times the carriers will look at your age and your date of birth, but they'll also run a prescription history to determine what kind of risk. So they can tell if Brett's a diabetic, then therefore we need to do this rate upload because we know that he's going to be having this drug and these expenses. And that's how they determine what the rates would be if they're going to, in that level funded market, if you don't do applications. So it's one of those where when the level funded market, it's a great place to be because your risk is based off of you as a group, but you're still sheltered by the carrier's book of business. So if you had a bad claims year, they might increase your rates, but you're also shielded a little bit by the book of business, and they're not just going to penalize just you.
I see. It's a complex world. I'm glad you're guiding folks through it. You mentioned before on the focus on working with someone local, advocating on behalf of your clients. What does that look like? What is that advocacy, how does that transpire?
Yeah, I think just the local relationships here. We have a lot of times where insurance, it can be just somebody's information was inputted in the system wrong. They're at the doctor's office and they need to see the doctor and the insurance isn't showing active. A lot of times we'll get that call and our team at the office will get it. We write a lot of the insurance for the medical practices here. So you might be at a provider that we work with. So we have direct contacts and we'll call the provider on your behalf, screen share, show them a snippet of information that says they are active. I'm not sure why it's not showing. Please hold the claim, see the member. Let's get it fixed on the back end. And so we don't want someone to make a trip to a doctor's office and then have to leave because, the insurance wasn't working. So just that local relationship with the provider community, they know who we are. So if you're seeing them and we have an issue, we can call them and get that resolved.
I love that. So, again, this is the second largest annual investment for many business owners and their company. So, don't go and utilize someone or a firm in which you're going to be a number. Utilize a firm where you have their number. And they're kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the market, so they can go exert influence to help you and your employees out. I love that. All right, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what it was like coming into working with your dad and working with this long legacy company on North Georgia Business Radio X. Do you have children who you want to come work in your business? Or are you a person who came into a family business? What are the best ways to do either end of that equation? We're going to talk about that now with our guest, Brett Fowler, Executive Vice President of Employee Benefits at Turner Wynn Smith, here on North Georgia Business Radio X. And I, of course, am your host. Lucky to be here with Brett today, Phil Bonelli. So, Brett, you mentioned you've been in the insurance business since you were born, really, because your dad is a great professional in the insurance business. So tell me, that is something that it could have been a turnoff for the industry, but it was something that you liked the industry. So what drew you to it, and what are some keys to success, do you think, coming in and working with and for a parent?
Yeah, I'd have to say, I've got to be around it all the way from as a young child. In 8th, 9th grade, I was there, and I would clean out the storage room at Turner Wynn Smith, and so I was doing filing for the accounting department, in high school, worked there some, and then did my internship ultimately there in college, and came back. So even despite all of that, decided to come back. But the thing for me, I think, is I love sales. I love to be able to bring a solution, to companies. And you mentioned, we were talking a little bit about the competitive side of things. I realized that in order to write business, an individual has to hire you. Sometimes they have to fire somebody, and it is a competitive business, and you want to be able to bring value to that. So I realized, being in a smaller town, even though Gainesville is growing, that these customers were people that I'm going to see at the ball fields, at church, at the grocery store. And so if we're not doing a good job, we're going to hear about it. And that's important, for me, is that coming into it and just building on the legacy that Turner Wynn Smith already had, but bringing value to our customer base.
I love that. So tell me about this. When you were 7th and 8th grade working there, cleaning out the filing cabinets or the closets and filing things, what was that like? Was it like, hey, Brett, you better go do this? Or was it like, hey, Dad, I want to help out? Was it more voluntary? Were you forced to do things?
No, I wanted to be around the business, and I think that was the first entryway into being into the business, and really got to see some things. You would be like, filing, how are you seeing things? But you get to see the company names, and you're like, oh, we do the business, we do the insurance, and I would say but Turner Wynn Smith does the business for so-and-so, and that, just to really get an idea of who all Turner Wynn Smith at the time represented, and in my opinion, especially at that age, it was the who's who of Gainesville, and those were people that you looked up to as those business owners. Okay,
I love that. So if I'm hearing you correctly, hey, your dad's there working at the insurance company. You were like, hey, Dad, I'm curious about this. So you wanted to get plugged in. He plugged you in ways that you were able to be plugged in, and that continued to develop an interest.
Correct. Yeah, it went a little bit further each year, and then I actually got licensed while I was in college.
Oh, wow.
While I was there interning, so it didn't sell anything, but went ahead and went through all the licensing courses so that I would be ready to go upon graduation. And many people in our insurance, in the insurance program at Georgia, went on to work for insurance companies, and a lot of people do that initially before they go on to an agency role, just because you don't have a mentor that's willing to devote all the time that is probably necessary to get a 22-year-old up and running out of business. You mentioned Trey earlier. Trey and I were lucky enough that with both of our dads working there, that they had a vested interest in us being successful, and that ultimately played in the decision to come back at a younger age rather than going to work for an insurance company first and then transitioning back, is that we had that direct relationship there. They were willing to spend the time necessary to bring us up to speed to make us successful at a younger age.
I love it. If you're just joining us on North Georgia Business Radio X, I'm your host, Phil Bonelli, here with Brett Fowler, and really just talking shop on some best practices of getting your kids engaged in your business. So tell me this, if Banks said, hey, Dad, I want to work at Turner Wynn Smith as I get older, what are some of the things you would tell him, and what are some things you would do to set him up as a successful agent?
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, it's really, I want him to see that it's not just about the business side of things. I mean, he gets to see the volunteer. That's something that Turner Win Smith, that we advocate, that we want everybody to be involved, whether you serve on a nonprofit, you coach a sports team, but we see value of giving back to the community. So I hope he sees that from what we do already in the community. But just bringing him around and letting him see just the business side of it. Whether he wanted to be in insurance or not, I think it's important just to at least expose someone expose your kids to the options that are out there. And the one thing I like about insurance is that we're touching so many different businesses that you can see what other businesses are out there. So maybe it's not insurance, but just by watching the insurance of that business, you could learn more about other options that are available out there.
For sure. And you've got to get pretty intimately aware and involved in their business, really understand it. So it gives you a great purview to what's going on and what are the keys to success. So let me ask you this: if we've got some listeners out there who maybe have joined a family business or who are going into it, let's say they're using an example of your oldest, what would you want to see from him, and what would you really not want to see from him if he came and started working under you?
Yeah, I think just coming in and working hard. I think a lot of times when you have family businesses, a lot of people lean on the success of their parent or grandparent, and they don't feel like they have to put in the effort. And that was one thing that I didn't want to come in and feel like anything was given to me. I wanted to make sure we earned it and that take the business from the level it was at to another level, versus just maintaining. And so that's what, just instilling that in him to make sure that he knew it wasn't just coming in to check that box of being there and continuing it. It's how can you come in and make it better. I
love that. And if you think about, there's stages in life. So when you all came in, you're fresh out of school. The number one risk management insurance program in the U.S., go Dogs.
There you go.
But still, in many ways, you don't really know anything until you start working, right? So you are blessed that you were in a position to learn from experienced folks, and you had the humility and the hard work and drive that you did that. So you learned and you worked hard and applied yourself, all right? But because you're younger and have a different level of energy than the generation before you, that allowed you to then take the business to another level, which is so key.
Well, and in sales, coming out, I looked really young at 22 and calling on businesses. And if you're gonna trust somebody that has that's really that's going to have a second most expense of your business potentially, with that's a big risk. And so there were many times initially going out on sales calls that we would joke and call it the gray hair effect. I would bring my dad along, and he wouldn't have to say much during the meeting, but it was one of those just to have him there to know that there was a level of expertise outside of just me, if there was a comfort level. And so we joke about that looking back. That was a lot of the first meetings, but he was willing to go and spend that time with me to make sure that we earn the business, as a team sale approach.
I love that. So outside of a broker's appearance or an agent's appearance, what are some things our listeners need to look for in the broker is going to be providing their employee benefits?
Yeah, it's got to be more than just rate. I mean, there's a lot of people in our industry and that are only selling on rates. And while that's an important factor in making your initial decision, that's just the first step of a employee benefit package. It's what kind of material are they giving to your employee? What education are they doing? Is there ongoing education? Not every group wants that, but are they offering that up? As you get larger in size, then what programs do they have? There's benefit admin systems, and there's a lot of different cost transparency tools that can be, as you get larger, that become more important. And is the benefits broker providing those to you? And what does their offering look like in that umbrella? So, but again, it's more than, I'd say, to sum that up, it's more than cost. It's relationships, and then what other value adds can they bring to the table?
I love that. So, you need more than cost, which they're going to get you the most competitive cost. Local has a lot of value because they can advocate for you locally and understand the intricacies of your local health market. Obviously, service and responsiveness. How much are they advocating for you, and how much are they educating your employees? And then, depending on your size, to what other programs can they expose you? So these are some things to look for if you have employee benefits or want to add them, what you should look for in a broker. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to be a savvy pharmacy utilizer up next on North Georgia Business Radio X. Are all pharmacies created equal? They all sell Tylenol, right? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Welcome back to North Georgia Business Radio X. I'm your host, Phil Bonelli, here with Brett Fowler, Executive Vice President of Employee Benefits at the Turner Wooden Smith Insurance. And we spoke a little earlier in the show. If you're just joining us, be sure to go listen back on how to be a savvy utilizer of healthcare services, things like CT scans, MRIs, things like that. But also, not all pharmacies are created equal. Tell us about that, Brett.
One of the things that during COVID, we were crunching numbers and we were not out meeting with clients as much just because we were doing Zoom meetings. It allowed us a little bit more time. We really dug into pharmacy data. And one of the things we found, and what we do for not only our small groups, but we view self-funded claims from our large groups to help in the education of our small groups. And so what we saw in the large group market, in the self-funded market, is that oftentimes the same prescription, same dosage varied greatly by what pharmacy you were getting it filled at. And again, it's not to pick on any pharmacies in particular, but what we found in that review is that your mom and pop pharmacies, so your local pharmacies, and your grocery store chain pharmacies are your low-cost pharmacies. The big box retail pharmacies are your most expensive pharmacies. And again, that's just what the data has shown. There's larger spreads there, and we've been able to really see savings in our groups in that education. It becomes more important when you're level funded or self-funded because those are claims that you're saving. And ultimately, we are making that education. We have many groups that in the self-funded market, they have put tiers in. So it's a lower cost if you go to a mom or pop or a grocery store chain, higher cost copay if you go to a retail location.
This is such, it's so interesting. That's why we have experts on the show. That surprised me because you think of the big box retail as driving costs down. And as the host of a radio show, which is all about local business, my heart is overjoyed hearing that the mom and pops are the place you need to go. So go to your local pharmacy. They'll be happier there, and you'll probably save some money while you're in there.
You got it.
So, we talked a little bit about how, at Turner Wooden Smith, you all focus on having your employees serve in the community, which you certainly do a lot of. And you are the upcoming chairman of the board for the Greater Hall Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for that great work.
Looking forward to it.
And our other multi-show segment we're doing is on the chamber. We've got Nikki coming up soon to talk about some things with existing industry. But tell us about a benefit of the chamber being that you could possibly get a better employee benefits plan.
Yeah, so if you are a member of a chamber in the state of Georgia, so obviously if you're located here in the North Georgia region, we hope you're going to be a member of the Greater Hall Chamber of Commerce. But if you're a member of a chamber, then you have access to the Chamber Smart insurance plan with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. It is a medically underwritten product, and it is in the 2 to 50 employee market for the most part there. But it is a great product. A lot of groups have transitioned to it, but in order to be eligible for it, you do have to be a chamber member. And we always try to advocate, we quote it for our groups, and if they're not a chamber member, it's a good reason to join. But it is a value add of being, the many things that you get of being a chamber member. That is one that a lot of people are joining the chamber for so they can get the benefit of joining that plan.
I love that. What makes the plan better? Is it the cost or the way the benefits are set up?
It is medically underwritten, but you're in a cost share of all of the other chamber members. And so your rates are based on you as a risk of a group, but you're also shielded a little bit by the group as a whole. We typically see the rate increases don't fluctuate as high as they do when on a standalone market. So again, you have to be medically underwritten. You have to be a good risk, but if you are a good risk, it is a great product to be in, and it continues to sell very strong in this marketplace.
I love that. So that's a great benefit of the chamber. I believe that there's a chamber membership drive going on right now. Is that correct?
There, that is, yeah. So we are in the thick of the membership drive, and a lot of great value adds for joining during the membership drive. So this is just one of the many, but definitely check that out if you're not a current chamber member.
All right, if you're just joining us on North Georgia Business Radio X, as we go into our last segment with Brett Fowler, Executive Vice President of Employee Benefits at Turner Wood Smith, also the soon-to-be chairman of the board for the chamber. I'm your host, Phil Bonelli. I'm on the board under Brett's soon-to-be leadership. One thing to kick off our last segment, go join the chamber if you're not a member yet, because it helps the community in many ways, and you can save on your employee benefits. I do want to touch on, we talked about a little bit ago what makes a good relationship with employee benefits. And this has been very eye-opening to me. I did not know, again, that it was the second highest cost many companies have. And it is something that helps you retain and get employees. I mean, I would find it very surprising if somebody went from a company that had a group plan to a company that did not have a group plan. Right.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of groups, even in the small group segment, that are having to beef up their benefit package to compete for employees today. And a lot of people think that if they beef up their employee benefit package, meaning that you offer more benefits, maybe you offer just more than medical, you offer life and disability, people think that you have to pay for that, but you can do it on a voluntary basis. A lot of times, employees, they just want to have it offered to them. So it could be on a voluntary basis where if the employee wants it, they can take it or not. But we do see many groups, even in the small group segment, that are adding additional lines of coverage to be able to compete with the larger counterparts, just because right now for the job market it's so hard to find good folks.
And do you have market data on kind of what different companies offer, like generally what categories of sizes do maybe?
Yeah, we have benchmarking data. It is hard because it's so industry specific. You have certain industries that are so tight that their rates have to be so low for their employees because in order to compete for staff, and then you have others who they might be an outlier in their industry where no one else in their industry offers benefits, but they do, and they're reaping the rewards of that in the form of retention rates and having longevity just of their employee population versus the turnover that other peers in their industry have. So, but we for sure can do benchmarking data to help determine, is your deductible in the right place? Who is your competition, and then what are they offering for benefits? Is it something that you need to expand your package on? Okay.
So if you're out there and listening and you're saying, hey, I'm struggling, as so many of us are right now, with getting and retaining good employees, or maybe I just want to take better care of my employees. What is something I can do? Or I'm not sure if I have the best plan. Maybe I have a plan. Get yourself a local consultant for this, a local insurance agent who's plugged into your market and who really does a good job of providing service and helping you walk through these things. I mean, I can only imagine trying to navigate this without somebody telling me that a major carrier's contract is coming up with the local hospital soon, or without helping me and my employees to understand how to use the benefits, or without helping me benchmark. So if you need somebody great in that regard, Brett Fowler's right here. It doesn't get much better than him. So give them a call at Turner Wood Smith. So let me ask, I want one more thing. Brett, our audience is business owners. We love to help them learn and have resources that are going to help them. And one thing I like to think about in leadership and in sales, and you are in sales, you're selling insurance policies. And what are some keys to that? Because one thing that strikes through with you that I think is with so many other great folks is that you're so much more of a consultant than what people think of a salesperson. How do you look at your role?
Yeah, our role has really changed. The industry market, insurance industry market, has gone from just a sales standpoint, having a good relationship, to a very consultative basis, and that's where we wanted it to go. We want people to see us on that level, and that's been something that the market has advocated for, but that we've tried to do locally. And I think it's an important part of business. At the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, these are people that we're going to see out in the community. So if we have somebody come to us, I want to make sure that we're giving the best advice. And it might be one of those things where it's late nights and early mornings to get them what they need. But at the end of the day, we want to be the resource for this area.
I love that. You need a consultant. You need somebody who's not just slinging price around, and that's the end of the value. You really do get what you pay for. And ultimately, if you're with a quality agent, a quality consultant, you're going to end up paying less over time because that advice is worthwhile. So I would just say to all you out there, be thinking about this. I hope that this is helpful to you as you navigate the current employment climate, as you navigate the current healthcare climate. And one thing I can tell you is that regulations will continue to change. The healthcare environment will continue to change. So go and get an excellent consultant and partner like Brett and the great folks at Turner Wynn Smith Insurance. So Brett, thank you so much for joining us. To all you out there running your businesses, fighting the good fight, we applaud you. Thank you for listening to North Georgia Business RadioX. I'm your host, Phil Bonelli, and we will so look forward to dialing in with you again next week.
You've been listening to North Georgia Business RadioX with Phil Bonelli. What local business do you know that should be highlighted on our program? Let us know. Just search North Georgia Business RadioX on Facebook or contact Bo at businessradiox.com. See you next time, and remember to support our local businesses.